all aspirants. Looking at current affairs for 22nd Feb. The news items that we have picked up from the Hindu newspaper are these 15. We'll look at them in detail. The first one, Amnesty False Sedition Law Curbs on NGOs. So this is Amnesty International. It is an international NGO which was founded in 1961 in London. It has also won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1977 for its campaign against torture in various countries. So this is an NGO working for human rights. So it raises its voice concerns on human rights violations. It comes out with its annual report, State of the World's Human Rights Report. So for the year 2016-17, it has also expressed concerns on human rights violations in India. So they are here listed below. First, on NGOs, it is talking about the use of the legislation FCRA, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. So under this, various NGOs have their licenses renewed under FCRA, and many of them have not been given a valid reason for why this has not been, the license has not been renewed. So it says this is violation of the right to freedom of association, that you can form associations. So NGOs cannot function. So that aspect is highlighted. Then also it talks of sedition law. That is section 124A of IPC. So IPC is of 1860. It is a colonial era law. So this sedition basically means speaking anything against the government or incitement of hatred or any such initiative taken by words spoken, written or signs. So that is called sedition. So this is not it's only in words or writing or any such signs, symbols as such. So this is also not allowed. There's no action, there's no violence or anything associated in sedition. It's just speaking up or venting out. So that anything against the government is not allowed. You are put behind jail under this sedition law that is still applicable in India, section 124A of IPC. Of course, Supreme Court has given various rulings on it, and it has stated that any criticism of the government would not amount to sedition. So though sedition has not been completely declared unconstitutional, but then it still prevails with various restrictions imposed on them. So that is the present status. So it speaks against this also, because sedition, these laws were there during colonial times when government cannot be spoken up against. Presently, criticism of the government is accepted. It's not something which should be completely ruled out, because otherwise there would be no reforms, no challenge to the government. So that is not what a democracy calls for. Then the next is regarding journalists. So it says that human rights activists and journalists are facing attacks from both state and non-state actors. Means governments are also putting restrictions on them, plus also the non-state actors. They are committing atrocities against them. They are threatened. There are various deaths of journalists also which are highlighted. Then it speaks of SCs and STs. Here it speaks of the abuses, widespread abuses against them, the death of this Dalit student Rohit Vemula, the suicide which he committed because of the atrocities committed against him in the university. This is highlighted. Even the cow vigilance group which attacked a Dalit man in Una, this is highlighted. So these are discriminations faced by Dalits. Also in access to public services, social spaces, temple entry. This is still a concern in India. That is highlighted. Then the children. Regarding children, it says specifically regarding a new amendment which has been proposed and has been put into effect. This is the Child Labour Act, has been amended. Now it allows children under 14 to work in family enterprises. Earlier, children under 14 were not allowed to work because this is the time when children are educated. So now it has allowed work under family enterprises, means it's within a family. But then this law can be abused. There are various loopholes. It can be passed off as a family enterprise, and the child would have to work in it. And even if the child is educated, because free and compulsory education is also there under Right to Education Act of the country. But then even if the child is educated and put to work beyond those hours, then it would not be actually fruitful education and growth of the child which would take place. So this is a concern highlighted even by critics in India as well, and this report also talks of this. Then another aspect is that children between 14 to 18 years of age can work. They can work in occupations which are not classified in hazardous. So till 18 years of age, children should not be allowed to work. That is what it wants. So since they are allowed to work in non-hazardous work is pointed out. And then it talks about the draft national education policy too. It does not mention of anything on human rights education. That is fine. Then regarding minorities too, about cow protection groups, they are harassing and attacking people in various states. These reports are coming forth. Even gang rape of 2 women in Haryana because they were eating beef is also an incident which took place in Haryana. Then in Jammu and Kashmir, it highlights about the protests which took place after the killing of Hizbul Mujahideen leader Burhan Wani, and after that the action taken by the government against these demonstrators. It was excessive force used. The pellet guns which were used resulted in eye injuries of many of these protesters. So that indiscriminate use of force, excessive use of force is one point which this report speaks of. Also, another case of a lecturer being beaten to death by army soldiers in August 2016 is mentioned, and detention of Kashmiri human rights activist who was prevented from traveling to UN for a session there. So he is speaking on human rights in Kashmir. So he was not allowed to visit UN. So this is another incident put forth. So this is what the report speaks of. It talks of human rights violations in the country. So this is regarding Amnesty International. So it conducts research and generate action to prevent and end grave abuse to human rights. Also, one important cause which it upholds is capital punishment, against capital punishment. So that capital punishment means death. So death sentence being given. Death sentence should not be given in any case whatsoever. So this, it says, is the ultimate irreversible denial of human rights. So this is regarding Amnesty International. Then the next news item is Saeed could pose a threat to Pakistan minister. So this is regarding Hafiz Saeed, who is under house arrest in Pakistan. So presently the Defense Minister of Pakistan is addressing a conference. This is International Security Conference in Munich in Germany. So there he has highlighted this, that Hafiz Saeed poses a threat to Pakistan as well. He is actually the mastermind behind the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks. And we have been putting pressure on Pakistan to arrest him, but finally now he has been arrested. Earlier too, when he was arrested after these attacks, he was released later. So the actions though are taken against him, but then they do not turn out to be fruitful. So presently he has been put under house arrest. This Anti-Terrorism Act has been brought against him. He is put under exit control list, so he will be barred from leaving the country. But see, he is under house arrest. Means he is not behind bars also. So he is an important leader there. So it highlights what kind of action Pakistan takes against terrorists as well. So this is regarding that. And he carries a reward of $10 million, which has been announced by US government for his role in terror activities. Also, Pakistan has said that it itself is a victim of terrorism. There have been 8 terror attacks in the country in February 2017, in 1 month itself. We just had discussed a few days back regarding a Sufi Shrine attack too. So that is there. And now presently, after the US regime change, the President Donald Trump coming to power, the West's policies and its functioning with Pakistan, how would that go ahead is not clear yet. So if it says that if West policies are going to be isolationists, it would not help in fighting against terrorism, because Pakistan is considered an important ally of US in fighting against terrorism in Afghanistan. But then Pakistan is a source of terrorism has been highlighted by India many a times. So cooperating when Pakistan itself cannot take action against terrorists within its own territory, as Afghanistan also raises this point quite often, then how can it be a partner in fight against terrorism? So how would US policy change? Whether it would or would not, we'll have to wait and watch. But Pakistan keeps on highlighting that it is also fighting against terrorism, and this being given as an example that Hafiz Saeed is put under house arrest. Then the next news item is shoot at site against poachers. So this is regarding Corbett Tiger Reserve, which is in Uttarakhand. So in this tiger reserve, an order has been given to shoot at site any poacher. Poacher means who are trying to kill the animals for sailing or for any other purpose. So these should be shot at sight only if as a self-protection measure, because these poachers themselves have equipments, they are armed themselves. So if they are a threat, they should be shot at sight. So though it is shoot at sight, means you will not wait to see whether that shoot in retaliation is not the order. But then this clarification has been given, it's shoot at sight. So anyway, the poaching in the tiger reserves in the country has increased drastically, and there are steps required to ensure that tiger population is conserved. So this action has been taken. So this is the tiger census data. So it may be a thing of threatening also, that the action which would be taken against poachers is highlighted as such. So shoot at sight will bring in fear amongst the poachers, and they would not intrude and enter into any such activity, indulge in such activities. So if that is the purpose, then it is appreciated. But if actually shoot at sight takes place without and not as a retaliation, then it's a grave human rights violation too. So that is there. So this is regarding Uttarakhand. So in 2015 tiger census data, it was said there are 340 tigers in Uttarakhand. It has the second highest tiger population in the country. The highest tiger population is there in the state of Karnataka. Second comes Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand has 2 tiger reserves. One is this Corbett Tiger Reserve, and in 2015 another tiger reserve was announced. This is Rajaji Tiger Reserve. So this is the second one. And another point is regarding the deaths of tigers. Deaths of tigers do take place, and there are various reasons. Many die due to mutual fights, many due to natural deaths as well, many in accidents, and there are some cases of poaching as well. That is there. These are the project tiger reserves in the country. So Corbett has one more added, Rajaji. So that is not shown here, but you should know. And the other ones too recently added have also been shown. So the additions keep on taking place. This is there, 3 tiger reserves you can see. 4 tiger reserves now in Karnataka too. Dandeli Anshi was also added. So Bandipur, Nagarhole, Bhadra, Dandeli Anshi are the 4 tiger reserves in Karnataka, which has the highest tiger population in the country. The next news item is coping with age when families are distant. So this is the 4th in a series of articles which the Hindu has been carrying since Sunday. So this is talking about the elderly population in India and the problems which they face. So we have already seen the demographic dividend which we have attained because of the high birth rates. So a high lower age population, the children population being high, eventually results into the working force increasing. That is the demographic dividend we get post the high birth rates which we had. But then now the working age population will also enter into the elderly category. So over the years, the elderly population will also increase in India. So they are dependent population. The children and the elderly are dependent on the working age population. So that aspect has to be taken care of, and steps need to be taken in that direction. So this, the elderly population, if presently it is around 6% of the total population, is expected to go up to 20% of total population by 2050. So what are their problems and how they can be taken care of? One aspect is picked up and discussed. In this article, it is talking about how they have to fend for themselves when their children go ahead and work abroad. So in those cases, then these population, they have the monetary support. But then what is required is the social and family connection which is missing. So that for that purpose, taking care of that aspect, there are many household units, senior citizen household units which are planned. So this international NGO too in India, this is HelpAge India, one of the largest non-profit organization for senior citizens in the country. It says that there are around 4,000 old age homes in the country, and out of these, at least 130 are designed as retirement communities. So they are trying to take care of the expectations and demands of the rising middle class population and affluent NRIs. So there is a demand of around 3 lakh senior housing units. So this is a demand which has to be tackled so that the elderly population's requirements are taken care of. Of course, the worst affected are the poor. The poor population has to be taken care of by the government. So government should make sure that old age houses with required amenities for them are there in place. So the social requirements which they have, their relationships with friends, neighbors, is ultimately what offers them the compensation for that lacking family ties because of the children working abroad, not residing in the country. So that is also the traditional family ties, the joint family as such. That aspect is also breaking up presently in India. So that also makes the elderly population fend for themselves. They stay separately. So for that purpose, all these may have a huge demand and has to be looked into by the country. Then the next news item is NIA puts off Nepal visit for sabotage probe. So this is National Investigation Agency. So it had planned a visit to Nepal, but presently it has been put off in the sense that it will be held later. So this visit to Nepal was for interrogation with this person, Shamsul Hoda, who has been arrested by Nepal police in a double murder case actually after he returned from Dubai. So there are these speculations that there are many rail accidents in the country which are caused due to sabotage. Sabotage basically means intentionally causing damage or destruction. So these train accidents which have taken place, one is in Kanpur, which took place in which more than 100 people were killed, and the latest one in Jan 2017 itself in Andhra Pradesh, in which 41 lives were lost. So these are having a terror angle, is being investigated by NIA. So there are speculations because this railway track Ghurasan in Bihar was seen to be having IED. There was plans to plan this improvised explosive devices on the railway tracks here, and these people involved were arrested, and they have named Shamsul Hoda, a Nepalese businessman who said to be involved in this attack. Plus also they have said that the ISI is involved in various, and especially in Kanpur train accident. So these have been caused due to sabotage, not by any problem with the tracks as such. So that aspect is also being worked on. The Rail Safety Fund, Railway Sanrakshan Kosh, which has been established by the present budget also, which will look into rail safety aspects, inspection of tracks, and if there is any damage has to be rectified, plus the coaches have to be improvised, the unmanned crossings have to be eliminated. So all these steps have been taken for railway safety, but this terror angle is also being investigated into. So Nepal presently has not been satisfied that Hoda is involved in such terror activities. He is presently arrested by Nepal police in a double murder case. So we'll see NIA will visit later and interrogate Hoda. So this is regarding this sabotage case. Then the next news item is, can you stop obscene uploads? Supreme Court asks internet service providers. So Supreme Court wants prevention, not cure. Means it is asking that there are these obscene videos or images or such content being uploaded on the website. So is there any way in which such uploads can be stopped? Means preventing, not even letting them be uploaded, rather than after upload they are deleted. Because in some fractions of time to a huge damage to the reputation and image of a person is already caused. So that is why Supreme Court is asking internet service providers. So there are various internet service providers, local and companies which provides internet services. So this is a question. It's not aware of the technicality. So Supreme Court is asking a question, is this possible? But then the counsel for Google in this case has said that this is quite difficult because there is huge amount of information which is uploaded online. So it is impossible to filter and block content before they are uploaded. So it has shown its inability. Also, court said that under the Information Technology Act, that how the internet service providers under this act are being abiding by the regulations, guidelines given as such. So that aspect that they also have a responsibility is being insisted on. So that is here. Then the further hearings would be there. We'll hear more on this case as well. Then the next news item is, India-Rwanda sign aviation visa deals. So we know Vice President of India, Hamid Ansari, is on a visit to African nations, Rwanda and Uganda. So in Rwanda, bilateral air service agreement has been signed. So this will provide direct flights between the two countries, which were not there. So tourism is one aspect which Rwanda is looking forward to. So tourism would be boosted with these direct flights. It's also asking India to make it a hub for even shooting films. So it has seen how New Zealand has been used for shooting Bollywood films, and it has resulted in boost to tourism in New Zealand from India. So similarly, it is expecting that tourism will get a boost if Bollywood films are shooted in Rwanda as well. So that is there. So this is one bilateral air service agreement signed, and another one is, there are other two MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding signed. These are on setting up an entrepreneur development center in Rwanda, an exemption of visa for entry of diplomatic and official passport. So if you have a diplomatic or official passport, means a Rwandan national, then he would not be requiring visa to enter into India. So on those lines, and vice versa too. So it's an MOU which would be signed. So these are the two other MOUs signed. Now Rwanda is a country in which tourism is picking up presently. So it has mountainous regions, it has various lakes. So tourism is said to be the largest source of one of the largest source of foreign exchange for the country as well. So that is why it is expecting India-Rwanda tourism also to build up, to improve. And another aspect is that tourism had also suffered in the country because of the civil war which was going on in Rwanda during the 1990s. In 1994, there was this Rwandan genocide. So in Rwanda, the dominant community is of Hutus. So this is a tribal group which is dominant, and another community is Tutsis. So Tutsis are a minority here. So they were committed atrocities on, and in this genocide in 1994, the armed wing of the political party here was now in power too. So that had caused around 10,000 of these minorities to be eliminated. So it was Rwandan genocide. So all that post which civil war initiated, and finally now there is peace and the country is picking up. So reconciliation is being sought between the Hutus and Tutsis, and now the country is coming back on track. Tourism is growing, and India is also building its relations with this country, Rwanda. Then the next news item is more radars to beef up coastal surveillance. So this is a proposal which has been gone to the Defence Acquisition Council. So Defence Acquisition Council looks into all defence acquiring of any defence equipments. This is chaired by Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar. So this has now taken the decision that the coastal radar surveillance network would be expanded. So this will be phase 2. Phase 1 of it is already in place. So phase 2 would be initiated now, in which static sensor chain would be upgraded. So acceptance of necessity has already been issued and the DAC has given its approval now. So this is the news presently. So we have a coastline of around 7,500 kilometers. So coastal radar surveillance is important because we saw during the Mumbai terror attacks, these terrorists entered into India through the coast. So for that reason, that was in Gujarat, in this region, Kutch and Khambat also. Here in these regions, at a cost of around 800 crore, this 2 vessel traffic management systems would be established. One in Kutch and one in Khambat. Another one is mobile surveillance stations also and radars which will be brought in under this phase 2 of coastal radar surveillance network. In phase 1, 46 coastal surveillance radar and electro-optic sensors. There are 36 on mainland, 6 in Lakshadweep Island and 4 in Andaman and Nicobar Island. And now 36 will have 38 more radars added up. So that is there. Also India is planning to have similar radar stations set up in friendly Indian Ocean littoral nations too. So in the Indian Ocean region too, these friendly nations would have radars set up by India. So that is on agenda. Another thing which was approved by the Defence Acquisition Council is for the shore-based intermediate engine repair facility for MiG-29K fighters. So this will be at Naval Yard in Goa. So this will be set up. This approval has also been given to the Indian Navy. The next news item is no discrimination of Indian children in Norway and why. So there are many cases of Indian children from who are in Norway. They are being taken away by child care officers. So this is at least 3 such cases of Indian children involved have been highlighted. So in these interrogations, discussions, it came forth that the Norway envoy says that this is a norm. That in 95% of the cases, we have counseling done for the families as such, where such cases of child rights being violated come forth. But in other cases, we also, if it's an extreme case, then we have these children taken away by child care officers, and there is no discrimination or special rules and regulations for Indian children as such. So that is a general norm applicable to all. It says that the government has the responsibility to look into reports of schools and kindergarten schools also, and they are the indication of how families are treating their children. So if they're not being treated in the right way, then counseling is done or even taking away of the child is done by them. So this is the Norwegian rule which is applied to India, and this has raised some concerns in the Indian community there. So this is Norway. You can see part of European continent too. Nordic countries these are called. There are 5 Nordic countries. Norway is here, capital Oslo. Then comes Sweden, which share a huge complete land boundary, and then here is Finland. So this is the Gulf of Bothnia here, and it opens up into Baltic Sea. These Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, which lies down here, and Iceland here. So these are said to be the 5 Nordic countries. So Nordic basically stands for north. So they are in the north. Arctic Circle, you can see, pass through all these 3 countries. So that is there. Faroe Islands here belong to Denmark. Aland Islands here belong to Finland. So they are in Gulf of Bothnia, opening up into the Baltic Sea. That is there. So these ambassadors of these 5 Nordic countries are presently in Tamil Nadu as part of an annual visit which they have. So there is an Indian population too up here in these countries. You can see Faroe Island here and Aland Islands here. So it's an archipelago, means a group of islands at the entrance of Gulf of Bothnia in the Baltic Sea, and they belong to Finland. The next news item is Labour mobility issue is key to UK-India FTA. So in the last video also we have discussed about India-EU Free Trade Agreement, or BTIA, Broad-Based Trade and Investment Agreement, which has been negotiated, and that negotiation has been stalled after 7 rounds of negotiations in 2013. But it started off in 1997. There were so many rounds of negotiations, and till 2013 it did not make a headway. So these negotiations are going on, and they have not yet been finalized. So you can see 1997 to 2017 means 20 years. So that is there. But then now EU Brexit is taking place, means UK will be out of EU. So we have to have a India-UK free trade agreement too, and this has been negotiated as well. So the Indian government is highlighting that worker mobility is a key issue in this agreement, which will be negotiated and finalized, because the professionals who are working in finance service sector, IT sector in UK, they should be able to visit the home country and return freely. So that has to be ensured, is one major aspect which India is emphasizing on. So that is being put forth. The next news item is Acharya sets timeline on NPAs. So this is Viral Acharya, who is the newly appointed RBI Deputy Governor. So he has said that there would be a timeline on non-performing assets. So for that, there are 2 ways in which it can be handled. He has suggested that a private asset management company could be established. So similar recommendations have been given in the economic survey as well. So they have been reiterated now, that an asset management company which would be suitable for sectors in which there are these non-performing assets. So there, where the stressed assets are there. Non-performing assets means assets on which the banks is not receiving interest and repayment of the loan. So those are called non-performing, means it's a bad loan. It's a burden on the bank now. So such assets have to be put into a asset management company. So they can have the economic value reimbursed in the short run. They can have some economic value, and that can be taken care of. And in the some moderate level of debt forgiveness can also be given, so that it becomes performing. It results in giving returns. So that is a private asset management company which can be established. It says like sectors like metal, telecom and textiles, in this can be used. And it says that a public sector banks gross advances are highly stressed, and this is a significant majority of the non-performing assets. So even a national asset management company can be established. So this would be a government based model. This is private, this is national asset management company. So this will be necessary for sectors where the problem is not just one of excess capacity, but economically unviable assets are there. So these are not viable even in the short term. Medium run, short term viability is not there. So such assets have to go into this national asset management company. And here he suggested that surgical restructuring can take place. So banks have been suffering because of these bad loans. So steps need to be taken to take care of them, so that their balance sheets can be strengthened. Because if the non-performing assets are there on the balance sheets, as long as that problem is not resolved, that burden weightage is carried on over the quarters. So that is where, to strengthen banks' balance sheets, surgical restructuring needs to be done. Means he's also indicating some debt forgiveness will also take place, so that these bad loans are eliminated. Then the next news item is India-Japan Ink Pact on Railway Safety. So India and Japan have signed an agreement on enhancing railway safety. So Indian Railways, India is working on improvising rail safety. There have been many train accidents in the present year too. So they have increased derailments have increased compared to last year. So sabotage and intentional causing damage is being investigated into if there are terror links. But then taking care of rail safety as such is also being worked on, and that is why this India-Japan agreement has been signed. Areas of cooperation are rail inspection, automatic railway track safety inspection can be done. So Japan has expertise in railways. So maintenance of rolling stock, the coaches as such too can be done through this cooperation agreement. So it's majorly to prevent rail accidents. The next news item is 4 new tiny frog species found in Western Ghats. So Western Ghats is said to be a biodiversity hotspot, and now 4 new species have been discovered, and these are amphibians. And these are tiny frog species. So they are as small that they are as small as the human thumbnail. So they can, like the image is also shown here. So this is the thumb. So this is the species. It's very tiny. Its size is less than 18 millimeter too. So this is there. It belongs to this Nyctibatrachus species. So they are called night frogs. So this is the name given to. So see, 7 new night frogs have been discovered. Species have been discovered. Nyctibatrachus is the genus to which they belong. They are endemic to Western Ghats. So they are being threatened by climate change and by human induced activities too. So these human activities which are causing them to be threatened are like various hydroelectric projects which are being proposed in this region, the pilgrimages which take place in this region, the plantation areas are also where these night frogs have been discovered. So 32% of the frog species in Western Ghats are already threatened with extinction. So that is there. So this discovery, a new discovery of an amphibian species is important. So that is there. It says 103 new amphibian species have been described from biodiversity rich Western Ghats region between 2006 to 2015. So this discovery is there. Then the next news item is how ponds can speed up global warming. So this is a study which says that tiny natural ponds are a danger and they can speed up global warming later. So these are scientists from Britain who have found that ponds which are very small, like a meter across, so if that's the size of the pond, then gradually they lose the capacity to soak up carbon dioxide and they give off methane. So that is the study which has been done. So they have artificial ponds have been warmed, and this effect of global warming which would take place has been seen on them. So this will be when global average temperatures by 2100 year would be around this much. So that much increase has been done, 4 degrees Celsius increase, and they have been studied. So it says that even after 7 years at this higher than ambient temperatures, the ability of ponds to absorb carbon dioxide will be reduced by almost half, and methane release will be doubled. And you should know that methane is about 28 times more effective in trapping sun's radiations. Means global warming intensity is much more of methane than carbon dioxide. So 28 times more potent. So greenhouse gases, one of them apart from carbon dioxide, methane is also greenhouse gases. So these greenhouse gases, what they do is they don't allow the sun's radiation to escape. So trapping the sun's radiations, it results in heating up the Earth's atmosphere. So methane is quite more harmful. So these ponds generally they absorb carbon dioxide. So that is one benefit which they have. But then small ponds will lose this ability and they will be releasing methane. So this is a study which has been put forth. So of course, in terms of the huge proportion, tiny ponds, these ponds are only a tiny fraction of Earth's surface area, but they are responsible for about 40% of methane emission from inland waters. So this has already been shown in an earlier research that methane emissions take place from these inland water bodies, so through these tiny ponds as such. So that is there. It says in contrast, soil will initially stimulate carbon dioxide emissions, but then later it will gradually reduce. But these tiny ponds are having carbon dioxide emission reduced, but methane emission is being increased. So that is the concern put forth. So it says main source of man-made carbon pollution is fossil fuels. So they account for 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions. The other sources of greenhouse gases are deforestation, livestock industry. So even these animals, when they eat, when they consume their fodder, after that when they pass off gas, that gas is methane. So livestock industry also results in greenhouse gas emissions. Agriculture also, emissions take place from crops. So greenhouse gas emissions take place from these activities too. But a major culprit is fossil fuels. Then this is the greenhouse effect discussed here. So you can see solar radiations when they come on the surface of the earth. Some radiation is absorbed by the earth's surface and earth's surface warms up. Some radiation is reflected by the earth and the atmosphere. So it goes off. You can see this is absorption, this is reflection, moving back. And some of the infrared radiations, they pass through the earth's atmosphere and is absorbed by the greenhouse gases. And these are re-emitted. So after absorption from the greenhouse gases, they are re-emitted by the atmosphere. So from the atmosphere, they go back, strike back on the earth's surface. So these are infrared radiations, shortwave radiations, and they result in warming of the earth's surface. Then they are trapped. So greenhouse gases results in trapping of this heat inside within the earth's atmosphere. So you can see natural greenhouse effect also take place, means solar radiation, because there are gases in the atmosphere, but then in limited amount. So carbon dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, methane, these are present. So solar radiations come in, greenhouse gases absorb and they re-radiate heat. So this is there, and more heat escapes. So escape of heat also takes place and re-radiation also takes place. But when human-induced greenhouse effect takes place, means human-enhanced, means when these greenhouse gas emissions increase, then less of heat escapes back into space and more of heat is absorbed and re-emitted. So that is why the global warming which we see is there because of human enhanced greenhouse effect. What factors contribute? We have already seen. Farming practices also. Deforestation, burning of natural gas, coal and oil is the major cause of greenhouse gas emissions. Even industrial gases from factories result in greenhouse gas emissions. These are the various greenhouse gases, amount by which they are present in the atmosphere. So majorly it is carbon dioxide present. Methane, this is in quantity, but in the potential of causing greenhouse effect, methane is 28 times more than carbon dioxide, as we just saw. So in quantities, carbon dioxide is the major greenhouse gas, then comes methane, then chlorofluorocarbons, nitrous oxide is the third one, chlorofluorocarbons, sulfur hexafluoride. So these are the various greenhouse gases. Perfluorocarbons. Then the last news item is green tea laced capacitor to provide wearable devices. So these are devices which will be used. Wearable devices means an electronic device which can be worn, like a band or a watch or something like that. So when these wearable electronics would be used, then there needs to be supercapacitors used in them. So supercapacitor, what is a capacitor? Capacitor basically stores. So this is a capacitor that it is used in electronic circuits to store electricity. So this capacitor is actually charged, and then once it is charged, it is placed in the circuit. So it will, without use of electricity, it will flash LED light. So just the way batteries are also used. So these are capacitors. So these capacitors, supercapacitor means having much more storage as such. So these batteries, they have chemical storage. And supercapacitors, they have surface charge storage. So storage is here, charge is stored on the surface. So here the energy density is high, here energy density is low. So batteries also have a low life cycle due to degradation, and supercapacitors have high life cycle. So that is why they are preferred as well too. So these supercapacitors which are to be used for these wearable devices, they have to be not be rigid, they have to be flexible. So these both supercapacitors which we have presently are rigid. So now researchers from India, this is CSIR National Chemical Laboratory in Pune and Academic of Scientific and Innovative Research in New Delhi, they have researched and found a polymer gel which is present in green tea extract, that this can be infused with polyphenols. So this results in, it's given a coating of silver nanoparticles too and a layer of conducting gold and poly. So this results in a supercapacitor being formed. So supercapacitor is basically made of these chemicals only. So this supercapacitor then is flexible as well as having this high power and energy density. So this is the discovery, this research being made presently. So that is it. These are the news items. Thank you.